So now we'd like to move to our last segment of our virtual career days. We'll be ending with our panel discussion. We have 4 alumni with us, Moritz Brill, Tessa Coggio, Kevin Dibb, and Andrea Mattoni, who are going to talk to you about and provide helpful tips on why German is a important language to have in terms of boosting your career aspects. And I see most of you are already here. All of you are in the chat with me. So I'd go ahead and welcome you to turn on your cameras and join me on screen. I'm just going to start by giving a brief description of you so everyone knows who is who and a little bit of the background. And then we'll be going into some questions just so everyone here can hear about, what sparked your interest in German, how your decision to pursue German or spend time in Germany impacted your career, be it academically or professionally. And then we, of course, all of us listening would love to hear some advice or tips to those of us who may be learning German and are looking for a career at a German company or in Germany. So I'll go ahead and I'll preface this by saying if you have any questions to any of the speakers during the panel, you can go ahead and type those into the Q&A feature. If you have questions for a specific speaker, you can go ahead and let us know as well. Just let us know who the question is directed to. And we'll go ahead and start here. I'll just give a brief introduction to each of you, and I'm just going to go in the alphabetical order I have here in our program. So starting with Moritz Brill, he's here with us today. Moritz currently works as a senior manager with focus on analytics for Deloitte Consulting. He completed his Bachelor of Science in Dortmund, Germany, and afterwards a Master in Business and IT in Australia. With the international experience, he first worked on global projects for Deloitte Germany and transferred in 2014 over to Deloitte US. His background allows him to provide clients subject matter expertise in analytics and utilize his knowledge and network with the German-based software vendor SAP on a daily basis. Overcoming the language barrier is becoming less and less of a challenge in our global economy, but still critical to quickly gain trust and build relationships. So thank you, Moritz, for joining us here today. We also have with us Tessa Coggio. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You all may correct me if I'm not doing that.
Coggio, butchered an Italian last name, but don't worry.
Could you say it again?
Coggio.
Coggio, okay. Perfect. Tessa Coggio lives in Washington, D.C., working for an international humanitarian NGO, which is a non-governmental organization called Relief International. She holds a BA in German and International Studies from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and an MA in German and European Studies from Georgetown University, where she studied policy on humanitarian emergencies, migration, and development cooperation, Tessa has a long history living and working in Germany, including a DAAD study abroad year in Freiburg, teaching English as a Fulbright scholar in Saxony, and 2 internships in a German parliament in Berlin, and that is with IPS and DAAD. Living in Germany during the 2015-2016 refugee arrivals, Tessa volunteered with refugee council groups, teaching German to newcomers and sharing in the experience of making Germany our adopted home. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We also have with us Kevin Dibb. Kevin currently serves as the protocol officer and social secretary to the German ambassador at the German embassy in Washington, D.C. He's originally from Long Beach, California, and he spent a year of high school living in Belgium with AFS. You'll have to tell us what AFS is. And then lived a year in Wuppertal, Germany as part of the CBYX high school program. And we did hear a little bit about CBYX yesterday. Thereafter, he completed a BA in History of Public Policy with minors in French, German, and Russian at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He then completed an MA in German Studies at the University of Colorado Boulder, spending summers teaching German at Waldsee Language Village and a research year in Regensburg, Germany through the DAAD Scholarship. So we have another one of our speakers here making use of the many scholarships that DAAD provides. After finishing his master's, he did an IPS fellowship in the German Bundestag interning for a SPD member of Parliament in Berlin. Since then, he has been in Washington, D.C., first working as a project manager for the Wunderbar Together campaign with the Goethe-Institut before starting his current position at the embassy. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here. And last, but certainly not least, we have Andrea, you'll have to let me know, Mattoni. Andrea Mattoni has over 4 years of consulting experience, having previously worked for Deloitte Digital in Germany. In 2009, she transferred to the US office and is now based in New York to expand her international career. Andrea's added value lies in her hybrid marketing capability, bringing in her digital customer and expertise combined with technology implementation experiences, and that includes Salesforce and Adobe. Her work reflects full project lifecycle experiences from strategy definition implementation to ongoing operations across the telecommunications, media, and technology industry. So again, thank you all for being here with me today. We just want to hear about, your experience with Germany, what led you in that direction, and what the added value is of, learning another language and necessarily not having to be German. So I'd just like to open the floor, and I'll go again in the order we have here, since it's a little harder to kind of gauge it on screen when we're virtual. Just starting with an overarching question. So just reading your backgrounds, what sparked each of your personal or professional interests in Germany? What led you in this direction? And I'll go ahead and let Moritz go ahead and answer here first, if you'd just like to take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you perfectly.
Okay. So the question, what sparked my interest in German or Germany?
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I think it's an unlucky question because I'm originally from Germany. So for me, it's rather the opposite. I took the advantage of having international experience or gaining it in other countries that led then in the end to the US. But for me, the personal story is just I work with a German software vendor, so SAP, as you pronounced it originally, I would call it as well. And the advantage is just because it's a German product, you can go to virtually every country. And I think 99% of the Fortune 500 in the US implemented SAP. Has got then the advantage that I can use that background to come here actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tessa, do you want to tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in German or spending time in Germany applying to those programs?
Sure. And I am American. I'm originally from the Midwest, born in Minnesota, and grew up most of my life in Wisconsin, just across the border. I like to say I cheated in how I got involved in Germany. It was by no choice of my own. My parents moved there when I was about 5 years old for my dad's job. Just for a few years, I lived in Bayern, about 20 minutes from the Austrian border. And so really tiefst Oberbayern, for those who know. Small town Germany, I had no choice but to go to a German kindergarten and elementary school and was thrown right into the language, but at the perfect age to learn a language. So I got really fortunate due to my parents, life and career choices that I've benefited from that. But, we moved back to the US a few years later. And again, most of my upbringing has been in the States. But I started to realize myself when I was maybe a junior or senior in high school that I didn't want to take for granted this language that I had learned as a child, and that I started to pursue it and sort of relearn. I'd lost a lot of it, which I hear often from people who've had similar stories to mine. Luckily, I found it so interesting. I love international travel, and this was my closest opportunity to stay very closely tied to a foreign country. And I'd say by now, Germany really is a second home. I got my language skills back up to where they needed to be, full fluency, so I could open up some, study and career opportunities. And I ultimately met my husband, who is a German man. So the rest of my life will, I think, continue to be very closely tied to Germany, even if right now my career has taken a bit of a different route, but I'm happy to expand on that with the later questions.
Wonderful. And I think it's interesting. So you have your BA in German and International Studies. Was that a decision that you made, from the start, or did the German come a little later? You saying you have that background,
Yeah, I lucked out for, if there are any high schoolers or high school teachers who are on this listening in right now, I lucked out that my high school allowed me at my advanced German level skills that I was already at as a high schooler to take some college level courses. And if those opportunities are available to some of your students who maybe are showing in any language, higher level, I could get some credits under my belt, and it allowed for a very easy double major within 2 years, just because I went in with several German credits already.
And how did you go about, finding the resource to see if you could maybe test out or get those credits? Was that something specific to your school? Is there any advice you would give to those who say, I know some German, maybe I can save myself a class here or there?
Yeah, I would ask your German teachers. I fortunately grew up in a town that had a local university, so it was easy. I could literally walk over to campus from high school for my college classes. But I mean, I think we're seeing that virtual education is possible and even necessary right now. So I'd reach out to your German teachers, and maybe your school administration knows of some programs. I don't even remember what mine was called, but it was definitely a program that allowed high schoolers to take language classes at the university level. And if you're ambitious about learning German or another foreign language and you love it, go with it and take advantage of the time by starting early, I guess.
Great, thank you so much. Kevin, you're next in line and also next on my screen, so I have the correct order here. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about what sparked your interest in German, or to apply for one of the many programs you've done in Germany?
Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, I actually originally was very interested in French and did this year abroad in Belgium when I was in high school through AFS. It's this big high school exchange program. And after doing that, when I came back to the US and finished high school, I'd had this great kind of European experience, loved the time there, and was looking for a way to go back, and heard about the CBYX program, the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange. And since then, it has just become really apparent through that program and through numerous other programs that I have done, and Tessa has also done some of these too, that Germany just invests a lot of money in foreigners abroad to bring them to Germany, teach them German. So there just were a ton of opportunities, and that really kind of drew me in. I did the CBYX program, and after doing that, when I went back to the US, I kept up with the German major, and it just kind of kept going on from there to a German master's. My first kind of big professional experience was an internship in the German parliament. So I think for young people, if you're in high school and stuff, if you just kind of commit to a path like this, it really opens doors down the line. And it worked out well,
Wonderful, thank you very much. Andrea, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I think the first question I'm asking, you're also in a similar situation as Moritz, so you bring kind of that German background already. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how or what sparked your decision to, so to say, transfer to the US office from Germany.
Sure. I'd love to talk about that. So I actually work with the same company as Moritz does, and it's an international consulting company. And given my international academic background, I'd always strived to work in such an environment, to be, at the heart of a melting pot. And I had initially started at the consulting firm in Munich, Germany. And understanding our work in technology and the strategy, it was, per se, the next transition to go into a country where technology was at its best. The market is a lot more mature here, given our conservative clients in Germany, and being able to have access to that advanced talent or more mature capability set really enticed me to want to transfer to the United States. And I think, and no question, when I had the offer to either go to New York or Chicago, I chose New York because the city and the lifestyle and the people and the culture really attracted me to that kind of career path. So ultimately, that was the reason why I had transferred from Germany to the US about 1.5 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe to keep, so to say, the flow going, I think I'll just work backwards here since you were already talking about it. I'd like to talk a little bit more about how your decision to either learn German or spend time in Germany, or even having that experience working in a German company and then bringing that, to your current positions here in the US, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what that impact was, or, if there was any benefits compared to, only having English as your language, or only having, spent time here in the US. And I'd like to start with you, Andrea.
That's a very good question. So I think the assets that I brought over from Germany are very much gravitating towards the soft factors, the soft people and cultural factors. So I think as a German person myself, we are a lot more process oriented. We're much more systematic. We're much more organized inherently. So having that skill set and bringing that over to the US, I think brought a lot of value to the project that I'm leading right now. Being able to be the calm in the storm, to be able to find structure in organized chaos, which is, the nature of our work. But it's fascinating how actually it takes you going outside of your own country and realizing, the value that you bring to the table, because you realize how people and cultures work so differently. And I think that is one factor of it. And yeah, I'll let the others speak about their own experiences, but I thought that was significant to my value when I transferred.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to work backwards here. Kevin, maybe you could also speak a little bit to how, having made the decision to learn German here over French has impacted, where you are today and the benefits that has given you. And you could maybe even talk about, some of the programs you've done there for those who might be interested in going that same step, because we have had presentations on CBYX and IPS as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah, German language has honestly been my entire career. Like ever since my master's program, I've only worked for German institutions. And the way I've been able to do that is really just by committing and investing in learning German and becoming professionally fluent in it. So my first experience through IPS, which I'm sure Tessa can speak to as well, is a great program for recent graduates and for young professionals to go spend 6 months as an intern in a Bundestagsbüro, in the German Parliament office. And so you do a myriad of tasks for a current member of their parliament, which was a great experience. And that led me to the Goethe-Institut, where I was a project manager. But I think the reason I really got that job was being fluent in German and being able to work in the US for a German-speaking team. And so I think if you just take a couple of years of courses and stuff, I think it might be hard to really translate German language into an actual career set. But if you really commit and become professionally competent in it, it can really open doors. And now currently at the embassy, everyone there, at least for the most part, are German diplomats. We work all in German. And having already done several professional experiences has kind of brought me up to a level where I can operate at that function. So the other program I do, CBOX, that started this all off, is a great program. I'm sure many of you already got the spiel on it the past day or so, but it's for high school students, and they also have a young professional component. It's a full ride to go spend a year in a German host family, attending a gymnasium. For me, it really was what jump-started my German language skills, because you spend 12 months, living in German, eating in German, going to school in German. That was a great experience. And DAAD, as well as the political foundations that each party has, they offer not always full ride, I don't know the full numbers, but great monthly stipends and scholarships for students to go study in Germany.
Kevin,
great, thank you very much.
Apologies, one question from the side. You said you were working for the German Parliament, so the Bundestag. Mm-hmm. Is it as bureaucratic as everyone says? I'm asking now as a German. I'm curious what your perspective is.
I had a great time. I was in the SPD, the Social Democrats, and my Abgeordneter, he was on the Haushalt committee, so the budget committee, and I think getting kind of firsthand look at how governmental budgets are created, it really does kind of show you how bureaucratically intense that can be. But I think that's just the way governments work. You're operating with a lot of money. There has to be a lot of oversight. A lot of hands have to be involved in it. it was definitely a very interesting experience. I would recommend it. Tessa, what did you think? Was it a bureaucratic experience for you in the Bundestag?
Yeah. Yes. I thought it was, but to me that was part and parcel of what you expect if you're living and working in Germany. Also a lot of great Veranstaltungen. So
yeah.
And we heard, yesterday we also had a panel discussion talking about, some of the cultural differences in terms of, you mentioned the bureaucracy. Some things do have a little bit of truth to them. There was a story about someone crossing the street at a red light because, they're from New York City and getting all the stairs. So cultural awareness is definitely something that'll grow if you're, working at a German company or spending time in Germany. But maybe Tessa, you could also tell us a little bit more about how your experiences, learning German, how that impacted where you are now and what, has the benefits that has given you.
Yeah, no, gladly. I have actually overlapped with Kevin on certain things. I don't want to repeat too much. A lot of my German-related or Germany-related experiences have been very successive. So one led to the next, led to the next. My first internship at the Bundestag is where I found out about IPS, and then I applied to that program, the International Parliamentary Scholarship. And would totally underscore what he said about the language, and that really takes committing to get to a level that's usable professionally. So for those of you out there who are absolutely interested in that, know that it is definitely possible. I have so many friends who, unlike me, did not grow up, and Kevin didn't grow up in Germany as a kid, and their German is phenomenal, and they've been able to make some really valuable professional experiences out of it. I have numerous American friends living in Berlin right now, working in German. It's super impressive, and so take advantage of that. But the non-language thing that I want to mention as well, because I think that's important too. I said that now I'm not really in a German related or German speaking environment. That's true. Relief International is not present in Germany, and the programs we run are in countries like South Sudan and Afghanistan and Myanmar. And I have actually some German colleagues, but our working language is English, and it's just not part of my day-to-day anymore. But I still credit where I am now actually to experiences that I had in Germany. The first was becoming ehrenamtlich, as a volunteer involved in the refugee response when I was living in Leipzig, really brought me up close to many of the topics that I dealt with in my graduate degree and many successive internships after that, and now in my career on a daily basis. And also at the Bundestag, I worked for a committee on economic cooperation and development with many countries that have still developing economies and living standards that are below what you see in Europe or in the United States. And Germany's a front runner in those kinds of policies, a really generous country in terms of the programs it funds, the initiatives that it pushes for environmental sustainability in areas that are going to be most highly affected by climate change, innovative areas of cooperation with countries that build up their health infrastructure or access to food and other social services too. And so I learned a lot of that in Germany, working in the German parliament, and got really close to that policy, and it got me so excited to take that in a career direction. So I can credit Germany, I think, for that very much so.
Wonderful, thank you. And I am just taking a look at our time. So we have a couple minutes remaining. So I do want to go on to, this is the information everyone wants to know. We have students here listening. They're in high school learning German, or they're taking German classes in college. Maybe Moritz, you could start here. If we have students here saying, I'm learning German and I want to be, where you are one day. I want to be in your position doing things along those lines. What advice could you give them?
A good question. So I think there are two aspects to it. The first one is definitely take advantage of learning another language. You always connect with people differently. We have now colleagues or clients of us who speak some German, and especially in the consulting world, you bond very quickly if you have these common denominators. You have other opportunities really to get to know someone. For example, I know randomly that in Cincinnati there's a big client of ours, And what they do with Oktoberfest to know Christkindl market and so on, they still text pictures and so on. So it's just a different way of how to bond with people. And then on the other hand side, I mean, if you look around, you really get access to a network like for example, I see Peter Rosenbaum here. For me, I take fully advantage, and Peter, I hope you don't mind that I call you out, but with the Ruhr-Allianz that Peter leads, the events that he has, the network that he builds with that. It is a great opportunity to see something else that I don't see on a daily basis. And again, making connections through that, and people who really care and are invested in this usually have got a broad network around themselves, like Peter, for example, and you can tap into this. So definitely take advantage of learning the language, and don't be shy, even if you don't speak perfectly German. No one will mind that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we heard that in a presentation earlier today. So don't be afraid to make those mistakes. That'll be what helps you grow. And Peter thanks you in the comments over here. I'd also like to hear from you, Andrea. What advice would you give to those listening saying, I want German to be a part of my future career?
Yeah, I think I can only echo the advice that Moritz gave. I mean, not only is it an additional skill set, but it is a way to really access different communities. And I think, predominantly when I talk about our work in the consulting world, in the company that we tend to also have international projects. So our work transcends, the scope outside of the US, and we have some projects that go across Europe. And if you have that additional skill set, you are going to be top of mind for those lucrative projects, which is only an essential career boost. So that is definitely, a factor that I would consider when looking at candidates in terms of their international background, as well as skill set in terms of language. I think, if anyone is serious about learning German, I would fully support that and encourage that is definitely still an up-to-date skill set to have, even in the consulting world.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm looking at our time. Annette, we maybe have time for a couple questions. And since we didn't get to Kevin or Tessa, maybe we could pose the first questions to them.
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for all the firsthand experiences you shared with us. And we do have a question here in the Q&A from Catherine. She says, what type of German language classes did you take to gain professional sufficient set of language skills to be able to work and live in Germany? And what level of German is required to be considered fluent at the professional level?
I actually started learning German. I moved there for the CWEX program and had never taken a German class before. I showed up and did not speak a word of German. And it was just through that first year living with the host family and going to a German high school for a year that really kicked it up. Since then, I've done numerous college courses. I did a master's in German. I think to really learn the language, I would recommend going there and spending as much time in country as you can. Dating a German is always a great way to increase your skills. Having that kind of partner that you can just speak with all the time really helps. And it's really, commitment is the best way to actually get the professional level. Just like a minor in college and never really spending significant time there learning it probably won't cut it for a professional setting.
Okay, so spending time in Germany, just go over there, live there, and be immersed in the language and culture.
Exactly.
What would you say, Andrea?
Sure, I just had to unmute myself. I think it's interesting because I was lucky enough not to have taken those courses myself, just being native in that language, but I fully support it. I think having the educational backbone is a bonus, and then professionalizing it in terms of fluency is only by the daily application. So that only takes place in the context by putting yourself in that environment. And, that is Austria, that is Germany, those are all different German-speaking countries. I think that is the best way to professionalize your skill set. And, that is also gauged at different companies when hiring. You are bound to find a German interviewer to suddenly switch to a different language. So it's tested very, very well. So I definitely encourage people to not only take the opportunity to live in a German-speaking country, but really, really experience the end-to-end culture, the community, because that is so life-changing.
Mm-hmm. And I would also add, just it's okay to just like be patient with yourself. You know, it took me, I started when I was 18 when I went to Germany, and I've been working on this for 10 years now. It won't happen overnight.
Absolutely,
it's a work in progress.
Correct, absolutely. And the consistent switch between German and English is also something that as German native speakers we had to learn when we picked up English, right? So the transition on a daily basis is something that takes practice too. It doesn't happen overnight. So fully agree that it takes patience and perseverance and self-motivation for sure.
So to our high school students who are listening today and who don't have the opportunity right now to go to Germany and live there, and who might struggle a little bit with the German lessons or learning the language, what would you say, what would be a good tip and a help to learn German in a better or easier way? Tessa, would you like to answer?
Sure. I can equate it to me trying to learn Spanish. I've been sort of trying to do it on my own for a while. And it's tough. It will probably never get up to the level that my German is. But where I find myself improving the most is when I kind of force myself to listen to, if it's like German news media, or watch German films or shows on Netflix, and maybe start weaning yourself off of the Untertitel, the
subtitles.
The subtitles. I'm not so good at the brain switching thing. I can do like one language at a time. And start weaning yourself off the subtitles. For example, there are fun ways to bring the language into your daily life without it just being like textbooks in a classroom and reading Bertolt Brecht, which has its time and place, and some people love it. I didn't love it, but it definitely contributed to me just practicing my German, growing my vocabulary, learning grammar. Another thing I think I would definitely stress for those of you who hate grammar out there, you can't avoid it in the German language. Moritz is right that you can speak imperfect German and people will still understand you, and that's perfectly fine and great, actually. They'll always be impressed with Americans who can speak German. But if you want to move into those professional settings, you've got to get your grammar under control too, and just keep at it, keep trying, keep practicing, and trust that eventually it will flow and feel more natural.
Mm-hmm. Very good advice. Thank you so much. And a lot of our audience, people are concerned about the living costs in Germany. I know some of you had scholarships from Fulbright and the AAD. What other opportunities are there to boost your financial situation a little bit while living in Germany? What would you say? Any of you, whoever has an idea.
I'd say that if you're planning to study abroad, I don't know if there are any college students currently on, but most universities have some kind of study abroad fund. And a lot of students don't know about those scholarships and don't apply for them. So apply. Your odds might be much better than you think, and you'll never get it if you don't apply. So it's always worth a shot. The other thing is that if you do make it as a student to Germany or something like that, you are legally allowed to work for a certain number of hours. My sister, when she studied abroad in Germany, she got a job waitressing, which was also to the last question about how to improve your language skills. That was such a cool experience for her. And she was allowed to work up to, I don't want to say the wrong number, but up to a certain number of part-time hours a week. And that was Taschengeld. That was extra money for her.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And maybe just to add to that, it's a really, really good point, Tessa. While I was studying in Germany, I think I was working 15 or 18 hours a week, and I think more is possible. But I mean, that was enough to cover most of my expenses, actually, as long as you find a job that is maybe related to what you study. So if it's something like I studied IT, if you're a developer during that time, you get fairly good hourly rates. you have to be a little bit lucky maybe as well, but it's not completely unlikely that we find something like this where institutes around the universities give you good opportunities.
I couldn't agree more. This is also an opportunity that I took while studying in Germany. So there are classifications when, as a student, you can be a Werkstudent, and that is essentially up to 20 hours. You can even increase it in semester breaks. And it is really a type of work that you do at a firm that you would like to work for in the future full time. So not only does it contribute to your career path, but do actual students self-finance themselves throughout their studies. So this is a complete legitimate way of finding and working while studying and being abroad.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for summing that up. And we don't have any further questions right now, but would you like to share a certain experience, like some moment during your career when you really noticed in that very moment that German was so helpful as an asset to you in an interview or in a job application, or when you dealt with a client? Did any of you have a moment like that?
I guess I wouldn't really share maybe a professional experience, but something I think is really important too to focus on is that it's also just a very socially fulfilling thing. Like I love Germany, and going there and working there, you make a lot of friends. So I think I would just say this whole past week during this election, like I've just been WhatsApping nonstop with all my old German friends and people. So I think it can be really professionally rewarding, but also Germany is just a great place with great people. And if you kind of commit to that path, you will have a lot of fun.
Maybe kind of a strange and unexpected one. As I started pivoting my career more towards humanitarian and development work, I spent a summer working in Uganda in Eastern Africa. And one of my Ugandan colleagues in the office I was in found out that I spoke German, and he just started gushing in his own German that he'd been learning over the course of his life. And it became a little ritual then that every day the American would walk into the Ugandan office and with her Ugandan colleague converse in German. And I think it was a really special bond that we had, and surprising because it came out of nowhere. But Germans and the German language is all over the world. I think Germany is one of the most like traveling, or Germans are one of the most like traveling people ever. So no matter where you go in the world, you're going to encounter Germans. And so that was just kind of a touching experience for me that I unexpectedly needed to call in my German in order to build a relationship with my colleague in Uganda.
I mean, always watch out for the white socks in the sandals. Maybe one thing, it's a pity that he's not here, but in the last 2 years, I think for this question, we had always a perfect answer by another panelist who worked for Lidl, who said actually Lidl, one of the German companies that tries to expand here in the US very, very drastically at the moment. He said, if you want to go towards upper level management, because you have to report to the German headquarters, that's really for them a big thing, that they don't say go or complete no-go, but it is definitely something that for some companies who are headquartered in Germany still is considered to be beneficial. And I think it just relates to all what we said earlier a little bit as well. Culture, the understanding, the way of thinking comes with it. So if you speak their German, he always had a great example there that it helps actually for him and all the positions that he usually offered.
Yes, and I think you would agree with me that it's not only the language, it's also the kind of cultural specifications you encounter, you know, the way people treat you, or they might be a little less diplomatic in their ways of talking. Have you ever encountered a moment that was a real culture shock for you? Maybe in the beginning of your careers?
To be honest, I really don't find German culture and American culture that different. I don't think there's a huge culture shock. You know, people always say Germans, if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something. So they don't have that kind of American flakiness of like, oh, I'll be there, let's do it this afternoon, and then we cancel 5 minutes beforehand. Germans don't do that. But really, honestly, they're very similar people, I would say.
I have sort of a positive reverse culture shock. After living in Germany for a while, when I moved back to the US a few years ago, I suddenly realized walking into like any bar or restaurant anywhere, there were TVs all over the place. And that is not the case in Germany. I know that's something very small, but I was honestly surprised that I had forgotten this about the US and our like gastronomy sector. To me, that's something that I think speaks for sort of the rich social culture, kind of what Kevin was saying in Germany, that you can go to bars, you can go to restaurants, people aren't distracted necessarily by screens. They're there to enjoy the Biergarten and the camaraderie.
And you can also stay for hours without having the check presented to you.
Well, and you'll run down the check if you're trying to leave and nobody
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Would you like to share anything else with our audience and some encouraging words or anything where you would say this is step one in your career, in your future career? This is what I would do first if I were you. It's an open question to all of you.
Maybe find a short-term goal. You will get lost if you say in 3 years I want to be able to learn a language. Find something for the next 3 months that you want to achieve. Or I mean, traveling right now is very limited, I know, but I mean, maybe something else where you see here German event in New York or something like that, where you say, by then at least I want to be able to speak 3 sentences.
I like
That's
that
a small goal.
Yeah, small goals. I like that a lot. I was gonna say, depending on where you're at, take advantage of your summers or potentially even gap years and many of the programs that are available. And there's whatever language level you're at, there's something out there for you. So maybe just start looking into it. EPS, Kevin, I think it warrants probably mentioning that they're not putting out applications, or they're not asking for applicants for the next year because of COVID. Everything's been pushed 1 year. But that kind of a program takes a lot of preparation and build up anyways. And so I'd just advise that keep your sights on like maybe some smaller things first, but start planning for either like that gap year that's coming up, the summer that's coming up, and how you can fill it in a productive way. That'll get you using German, and maybe even if this pandemic ever ends, which it will, going to Germany as well.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much for all that information and for being such role models of a German career. And we're almost at the end of our session, so I would bring in Eileen again, if she's already on.
Yeah, I am here. I don't know if you can see me. There's a few people up in the video chat. But yeah, we are at 3 o'clock now, so I'd like to very much thank you all for taking the time to speak to your personal experiences, providing helpful tips, and just for everyone listening in, or to the German teachers who are tuning in with their students. All of the panelists have provided their contact information in the chat if you'd like to reach out with them with individual questions. Maybe there's some things you didn't want to ask in the greater room here, or for individual advice. So thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and providing that advice and taking the time to be here with us today. We very much appreciate it.